here's the deal. So if you've heard me speak before in some form or fashion, raise your hand so I know. Why did y'all come back? Okay, so you know I'm going to swear, right? Okay, so
Kid-friendly.
Mostly kid-friendly. I will remind myself that I am being recorded because last year's session got a little loose, didn't it, John? So we're going to try to remember that. So I have like 5 slides. So when I gave that agenda, it was like, here's what was on my mind, here's what I was going to want to talk about, but I want to turn this into a Q&A. Please come in, find a chair, just hang out. Come on in. But I don't know about you, but it's the end of the day, and I'm feeling a little punchy right now. Okay, so like really relaxed, really laid back. If you want to swear too, that's cool with me, okay? Okay, so that's just a quick slide about me. Don't care much about that. Short version, I've been an IT recruiter in town for 19 years. The last 4.5 years, mostly focused on startups, small tech companies, helping groups that don't have a recruiter or HR person on staff grow their teams. And then I usually hand it off. That's actually changed since the first of the year because now I'm doing these 3 projects. One is with TCF Bank, which most folks go like, that's not a normal place for Paul to go to work at. And a few of you are nodding and smiling. It is like this really cool, so when I thought of TCF Bank, right, it was, I think this is where you go to get your first checking account. And this is where I go 7 Saturdays every fall to go watch Gopher football games. It was at TCF Bank Stadium. They're in the process of redoing some of their talent acquisition, some employer branding stuff. But they've got some really cool, here's the first swear word, they have some really cool shit going on there that nobody knows about it. So that's how I'm spending about half my time right now is at TCF Bank, particularly working on building up a data and BI engineering team. It's a little bit outside of my normal startup world. The second group, SPS Commerce, if you were here this morning, you heard Jamie Fingelstead, their CTO, do a quick hello. So we're helping them expand their Java development team. So they're looking from associate developers up to seniors and leads. And then Intertech, we're doing sort of a, we'll call it a recruiting audit, kind of a beginning to end, like how are they doing with the recruiting. They're also looking for .NET developers and then a recruiter. SPS Commerce, besides the Java developers, is looking for a director of engineering, a recruiter. I think they were looking for a DevOps engineer. TCF Bank is looking for the data, the cybersecurity, a .NET, some Java developers. Like we're building the whole team up. There are about 35 some openings currently. So that just kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing. Plus, it gives me a good time to give a good plug for those groups in town. That was the agenda that I put on the page for the session. I don't want to get into that yet. I'm just hoping that someone just has a question they want to get off their mind like right now. Like, what do you want to know about anything related to your career, job search? Go.
Been working in the big enterprise for 15 years. Want to dip my toes into startup. Talk about
funny how we're passing each other.
Like negotiating salary and benefits and equity, and how do you evaluate that in startup land?
All right. So the question being, and I'm going to remind myself to try to rephrase the questions since I didn't do it last year, and all you hear is me answering things. The idea is that working for an enterprise type company, you want to get into the startup world. It's different when you talk about salaries. It could be some remote working. Can you get some extra time off? Benefits. Like, it's just different. And how do you do it? The answer is, first of all, it is completely different. So there is one myth, though, that startup companies can't pay what a large Fortune 500 can pay. That's part myth, part reality, but part myth as well. So if I'm making up just a silly salary. Just don't hold me to this, right? You're a developer. You're making 110 a year. And then people go, well, I'm only going to make 80 at a startup. That's not true. You're not going to probably make your 110 unless it's a really well-funded company that's been around for a number of years. Like, you will probably take some sort of a salary hit. What you will get in return, though, me still being, hi, I didn't even see you standing in the back. By the way, so I'm just saying, still repping the Home Spider t-shirt. So you will, though, be able to start negotiating other things, though, is can you get another week's vacation? Can you go to a couple of different tech conferences that you weren't able to go to at your current employer? There's just more, can you work from home? Can you do some remote working 1 or 2 days a week? The equity part is always an interesting conversation because most startups will already tell you what you will get. there tends to be not a lot of negotiating unless you're like one of the first 10 or 15 employees at a startup. You really can't negotiate the equity all that much. It's you're going to get this number, and maybe you can get to that number plus a pinch, and that's about it. While I am kind of obviously going to a larger couple of larger companies now than what I've been used to, my heart and soul, frankly, still is in the startup and small tech company space, because you can do things that your people are going to touch. They're going to play with whatever it is you're developing, right? I also think that there tends to be greater just like satisfaction with the work that you do. So when it comes time for negotiating salaries, first of all, figure out if the person you're talking with are they a recruiter and HR person, or are they a hiring manager? And I say that for this. A lot of the hiring managers at a lot of startups, I'm stereotyping for a minute, haven't always done a lot of hiring before. So negotiations can get a little funky or sideways quick. I say this to everybody, though. Whenever you're negotiating a salary, you should always ask for a little bit more. My clients won't be thrilled to hear that, but that's what I would do. If you can't get it on salary, though, startups will tend to be able to negotiate on almost everything else. So again, if it's 3 weeks vacation, and can you get to 4? Like, be willing to go outside the box of what might be a number on an Excel spreadsheet, because remember, their investors are looking at their bottom line and how much is payroll going to cost. So think about that in that sense. Jen, how would you answer the question?
Salaries?
Yeah, for startups.
Actually, I heard this from a woman from Clockwork.
Okay.
Talking about women negotiating their salaries and how we undervalue ourselves
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And I actually used it this fall. You have to ask what your stomach makes you uncomfortable with.
I like that answer. Ask for what your what's uncomfortable for you. Like, here's the thing. If you don't ask, you're never going to get it. That's just flat out how it goes. And there are surveys after surveys that women will, if there's a list of 10 bullet points, right, women will only apply for the job if they have 9. Guys will do it at 6. So there are these things for the ladies in the room. Like, don't be shy if that might be in your nature. Just come on in. Like, really, just walk right by. It's all good.
And Paul, I've seen that with developers, not just females.
Yeah.
So I've seen that in the IT industry. I've seen it. It doesn't seem to be as much gender-y as it might be even elsewhere. So really.
So the thing is that I would get into it. The one thing I would say is this though too, but this is negotiating in anything. Like, just don't be a jerk. Because then what happens is you start shooting for the moon, or you haven't negotiated much in the past, so you don't know how to be like smooth or cute about it. You're just like a bull in a china shop. Like, that's not going to fly either. Did that get anywhere close to what you were looking for?
Perfect.
Yes.
What about percentage of the net?
Oh, we're getting into contract rates? Okay.
Like if instead of like how much a year and everything,
Yeah.
if you say a percentage of the net overall.
Oh, so you're trying to get a piece of the whole like revenue action in a company? Is that what we're trying
Like a percentage of the net overall.
to?
If you're negotiating that way.
I would suggest you keep things as basic and simple as you can, because what happen is that most groups outside of the coast haven't done this anyway. Like, I wouldn't complicate things. It's not that we're simple in the Midwest, but I think we are easier to deal with in the Midwest than maybe some of the groups on the coast. Yeah, go ahead.
If you've built a lot of skills, experience over a career, and are interested in moving out of being an employee and into consulting,
Yep.
as opposed to contracting, do you have any advice for that?
So getting out of the full-time roles, now getting into consulting. Matt, you look at deer in the headlights when I said that to you. If you weren't working at your startup, do we still call it a startup, by the way?
Let's not.
Are you a maturing tech company? What do I call KidBlog now?
Someone whose salaries are paid by its customers and not a VC fund.
So I haven't seen Matt in almost a year again.
Nice to see you.
What advice would you give to someone who's been in the IT space for a long time, going into the consulting world?
Consulting world?
Yeah, going full-time, was full-time, now going into the consulting world. If you were to do it, how would you do it?
To be honest, I'm not sure why you're asking me, but
I'm just asking because I want to say hi.
Advice is really easy to give, so here goes. One thing is, are you a consultant or a freelancer? Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like, just on your own, just...
Yeah, well, not being an employee, and that sort of includes not being a hourly contractor for staff augmentation.
So you really want to be on your own.
But not a founder or co-founder of a company.
Yeah, separate from being a starting vendor.
One phrase I've heard is freelancers are paid to say yes, consultants are paid to say no, so it kind of depends on what you want to go into. Consultants also bill for time they're not working, so your hourly rate is affected by that. Yeah, I don't know.
John, what kind of advice do you have?
What was the question again?
Oh my goodness, dude. See, this is why I'm now done with you for the rest of the day. John had a smart-ass comment about how he went to a recruiting presentation earlier, and he no longer had a recruiter crush on me.
Yes,
You and I are done.
yes, we are.
We broke up.
We are.
So I'll come back to you later.
Okay. That's perfectly fine.
That was awesome. If you ever want to catch somebody while they're on their phone texting, that was the best way to do it.
Yeah.
First of all, is to figure out, you have to start going to, like, what are your core competencies? What are the things that you can do on the side? Some people say, I just want a Java developer. Some people, this is like for full-time work too, but I just want a Java developer, but then we're like, I actually need a full stack engineer, right? It's to start figuring out what are all the add-on skills that you have versus just that one sort of core piece of technology you do. Because you will find that most companies will have, again, this wish list that's this big. By the way, if it's this big, you can also bill for it being that big. So part of it is, if you've been here today and you haven't done any network, I'm not picking on you particularly, but for all of you, if you're going to the happy hour and you haven't met people today, I'm politely saying shame on you. 2 is you still have time after you have that second beer to loosen up a little. Say hello, meet some people, introduce yourself, because the coolest thing about mini bars, this is the best place to meet people because we're all the same. Like this is, I called it earlier today, this is like mini bars, like the Super Bowl of our Minnesota tech scene. I mean it because this is so easy to network with, meet people. If you're trying to find contact names, which is almost always a bit of the issue, like how do I know who's hiring, who do I know who needs someone like me? One of the first things I would do is I would go back to where the descriptions were for the sessions and start seeing who signed up for some of the other events or some of the other speakers. Copy and paste their names into LinkedIn. It's kind of a laborious process. But then you can start figuring out, oh, the CTO fill in the blank was at that presentation. There's a software engineering manager who was at this presentation. And you just reach out to them, hey, I didn't get a chance to introduce myself to you at Minibar. My name is, I'm looking for. The thing is, you got to start building a pipeline of business. Because what happened, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I've made the transition from employee to contract work to consultant. It's gonna be hard to go straight to consultant because you might have a believability problem. So you have to
Oh, that's a
figure
good
out
answer.
what is your niche and what is that specialty that you can carve out. And the contract work can give you the money until you can figure out what that niche is and how to get paid and how to build that pipeline.
I've been doing the contracting for a while.
Yeah.
This is actually sort of a way to subsidize more towards working in a startup. If I can stop working 40 hours a week and slowly transition out.
Yep, so you gotta figure out what's that niche consulting offering that only you can do and be known for so you can get paid a good pay for it. That's what I would do.
That's a great answer. So some of my, I think that this whole Minnesota Nice passive aggressive thing, I think it's like the 4th year in a row I've mentioned this now. So from summer of 2015 to August of 2016, I was the IT recruiter evangelist at When I Work. And I took the fall off, like literally. I didn't work until the first of the year, and it was freaking awesome. So for the first time in my life, I took like an extended vacation, so much that my mom saw me at Thanksgiving, and she's like, honey, I gotta talk to you. I'm like, oh crap, Mom, what did I do, right? She goes, this is the most relaxed, happiest, most rested I've seen you since the recession. I'm like, that's 9 years ago. She goes, I know. I say that for this, because then when I started doing my business development stuff, January sucked. I didn't say enough times over the 13 months at When I Work, we're hiring, we're growing the team, but I never said, except for 3 times, that I was looking for a new gig. So when I started looking for new work in January, the pipeline was dry. And I kind of have a decent following of people. So I myself did a horrible job at marketing myself. So the part is about being really aggressive about it, though, is like a lesson learned. Flip side is that when I started doing it hardcore in February, I'm immediately actually a little I'm right now to an adequate amount of work, and I could probably take a couple more projects on if I didn't want to sleep. But this is that thing of going independent or being a consultant. You've got to manage your pipeline, because I can see the grin on your face. Because if you just work and don't forget this part, you immediately become poor fast. And maybe that's a blunt way of saying it, but so that's the part of getting way ahead of the curve, getting that niche down of like who you are, what do you do, what's cool about you. You'll find that it'll happen a lot faster.
So if anybody needs help on their technical stuff, release management, DevOps, moving from a inadequate tool chain to a better tool chain, I've done that a lot.
That's what I'm looking for, right? All right, so let's take one of these bullet points. What's the local job market? What's the job market like right now? If you've been having a hard time, if you've been having an easy time finding your next consultant gig, your next contracting gig, or you've got a bunch of recruiters calling you up to see if you want to move over to XYZ company, you will continue to have the same. So if the economy meanders around 2% like it has, all of you will know that you're probably getting multiple phone calls from recruiters. That will continue to be the same. If for some reason you're in a skill set that's not in demand, if you're not easy to find online and you're having a hard time with this, you will continue to have a hard time with this unless you change those things. Most groups in town are hiring, some frantically, some just bit by bit. There are very few groups that have done layoffs in the last 6 to 9 months, so that's the good news. Salaries have seemed to be, this is my perception of the tech community, have uptick plateaued now for maybe the last 6 to 9 months. I will actually say that I think that's a good thing. I think that we had gone up a very steep uptick plateau for about 2.5 years. Things have taken a bit of a pause, which means I would call them more normal-like. 2 years ago when I did this presentation, I thought salaries had gone up way too far, way too fast. I'm not saying y'all aren't worth it. I'm just talking about the realities of the tech community, what the salary ranges are. Okay, so I'm not saying that you aren't worth asking for a bunch. I'm just saying it's kind of plateaued for a little while, which I think is also a healthy thing for a tech community.
What are salary ranges right now in the Twin Cities area?
There's, so like, if any of you were in the What the Bleep is the product management thing that Adrienne Pierce and her colleague from Lead Pages gave this morning, the question was they had a salary. It was something like the average salary of a product manager was like 138 or 128 grand, and everybody was like, bullshit. It was probably a national survey focused on the West Coast. My answer there was I thought it was in Minneapolis, a product manager was 90 to 110. A senior person could get to the 120s. But then you have Target's sort of premium they're putting on people, then you have Amazon's on top of that. So anytime someone says, what's the salary range for something, I go like this, and then there's that, and then there's that. So there isn't, it's like taking a boat through the shallow end of a lake, and it gets all muddy and sediment starts rising up and it hasn't settled down. That is your salary market right now. Jen?
I looked it up on Glassdoor in that product
Yeah.
manager meeting, and the mean salary you were spot on is $105,000 for a product manager. And that's, so Glassdoor is a complete rocket science, but it will give you a good idea of what's happening.
So the one thing about salary surveys, so I think since the beginning of the year, right, Robert Half, Modis, and someone else have come out with salary surveys, but they tend to be weighted on the West Coast because that's the amount of people that are traditionally usually replying back to these. So more of them, and of course their salaries being higher. So I always say take it with a grain of salt. Maybe you see something, you drop 10 or 15% off of a survey that's just kind of online, and also because the data might not be current. We can talk a little bit more one-on-one afterwards if you want to. It's just that usually when I start dishing out salary advice, like everyone's like, that's true, or that sucks, or you know, we could do some stuff more one-on-one afterwards. Is this a good time to look for a new job? I would say actually right now, I think this part of 2017 is probably the best time we're going to see all year. I think a lot of groups took a hiring pause late in the fall into the early winter, post-election, and we're not going to talk politics till after we have 2 beers. But because I just want to know what y'all are thinking. But a lot of companies took a pause wondering what was going to happen with the economy. Was it going to be a big stall? What was going to happen with healthcare yesterday? I would bet that we're going to see companies, though, while it's been a good market, maybe it will pick up just a pinch, though, because now there's some certainty, if we can call that certainty now. I still think things are just batshit crazy, but that's my political statement for the day. What's a reasonable salary increase year over year? I saw one survey said that Minneapolis was like 6 to 9% on average was the internal sort of like if you were in a company, you'd get about a 6 to 9% bump. I think that's too high. I think it's only been 2 to 5%. I think jumping to another company, I've had people asking for 15 to 20%, and I think they're high, literally and figuratively. Like if you want to ask for 5 or 10 and you're willing to settle on 7, I would do that. at some point in time, right, you are only going to get paid what you're going to get paid. Like, there's not always going to be another 10%, another 10%, another 10%, another 10%. Like, that's just not how economies work. So I would say be a little careful, though, when you are, like, if your annual review is coming up or you're coming up to things like that, like, do negotiate, do ask for it. And again, kind of like in your scenario too, but if you're at a company, like, can you toss in sending me to a really cool conference this year? Well, that's $2,000, $2,500 more that you're getting compensated for that won't hurt their bottom line on their salary spreadsheet. But don't get greedy, because remember, we all live in a really large, small town. We were learning this today, obviously. Let me pause on that. Questions, thoughts? I'm begging you.
Do you want a story?
I'm torn between you and John paying attention. So we're going to go with you first.
I have a story because I also am in staffing. So we had somebody who is, I don't know, we'll call them a project manager. I can't remember what their exact role is. They're at a company that just pays really high wages. They do. You get a high salary plus their stock options plus there's all this other stuff. Well, no other company in town is going to pay that rate. So once you land that goal-minded job, you need to think, okay, I better actually take that extra money and put it in savings because it's not going to come back again. So this person got advice from a recruiter in town. I don't know who, thankfully, but that person said, well, now you should take your stock options and move it into your base salary, and that's what you should be asking for.
No.
Well, this person at a product manager level making $120,000 plus stock options, you're not going to get that anywhere else. You need to be reasonable. And recruiters are not totally evil, but don't give somebody that bad advice. I mean, that poor guy is now thinking, I'm going to go out and get all of this. Well, he's going to end up just feeling bad the whole entire time because the salary's going to go up.
I'm going to give you some life advice. Do you remember the recession, that great recession, the one that kicked everybody's ass?
2008. Couldn't find a job.
So here's the thing. If you are spending more than you're making right now, stop. Because here's what we know. There's going to be another recession again one day. And so if you are one of those folks who is spending plus 5% over what your salary is, just stop doing it so that you can make better decisions when the next recession happens. Because a couple of my developer friends are in the room. We got our, who got their butts kicked during the recession too. Like, stop. I'll just stop myself. John, what were you going to say?
A couple things. Had a situation fairly recently talking to somebody who had just gone through their annual review, had gotten a bonus, and got an annual review, and it wasn't to the full, 10% or whatever it was that they were hoping for. So they started interviewing for some other jobs, and then when they kind of were talking about how the fact that they had gotten their bonus and everything, when we really started looking at the numbers, it was like, okay, you just actually got your full bonus, and now you're actually asking for a new job with a new upgraded salary. Well, not only did they kind of shoot themselves in the foot, but now they're looked at internally from a negative standpoint. So I'm just trying to back up, if you understand what I'm saying, the whole idea about not getting greedy. I don't think this market, and they're in product management, by the way, I don't think this market is aggressive enough, even with the Amazon hiring, that you can really look at unrealistic promotions of percentages that are above 7% right now.
So I started doing this presentation years ago. The idea was that I wanted to make it so that people would start thinking about how to manage their IT career better. Meaning this, during the recession, I'm still obviously virtually scarred from it. The idea is that people, you fix your roof on your house when you need to, you take your car in for an oil change when you need to, you do all those things. Guys will put going to the doctor off for a while, but we'll soon get to that maintenance stuff sooner or later anyway. But the idea is that we only tend to really manage our career stuff when the annual review is coming up or the shit hit the fan at work. And so that's kind of why I want to do this Q&A, and I'll probably continue doing this for as long as people will show up, is so that we can at least start thinking about where are we at in terms of our company, our career, and and what's next for us. So just to, probably should have said that at the beginning. That's sort of the context for all this. Who's got a question? Yes, ma'am.
Find the dual advice of ask for what makes you uncomfortable and don't be greedy, people will look at you funny to be confusing and contradictory.
Ah.
How do you know the line between asking for what makes you uncomfortable and having people look at you funny?
There's something really cool about being called out in your own presentation for giving contradictory advice. And I thank you for doing that. So you're supposed to ask for, but don't be greedy. And you got me scratching my head. I think maybe it's because I've done this long enough that I know my gut knows when it's awkward. So maybe it's just because I've got a bit of a more of a fine-tuned button to it. Some questions to ask, though, if you're going into a new role. Now, this depends on how aggressive you are or how maybe extroverted you are. But it can be like, what is the average person in this group making right now? Because usually what happens is, right, is when you go in to negotiate a salary, you don't know crap about really what's going on there. So try to find ways to ask questions to find out, like, what is the salary range for the role? It also could be like, what happened to the previous person? Did they get promoted? Did they go to a new company? Did they get fired? Try to find out ways to figure out how needed this role is, right? So it could be like if they have an urgency to things, like maybe again you can get a little, you can maybe again uncomfortably ask for more versus you're being greedy. Part of it's just going to be your own nature though too. I will tell you that I still think that I am undercharging after all these years, which again I need to probably start taking my own advice on some things. But that's just in my nature. So I think for you, it's for anyone, it's going to be tone matters. How we ask for things just really matters. And coming up with a way to be able to say, I don't like it when people say, here's what I think I'm worth. Like that, if you like, I've been doing some scenarios with a couple of developers lately, like that just turns me off to hear someone say that. Here's what I think I would never say such a thing. Like here's where I think the market is. Here's what my skill set and experience is. This is the value that I'm going to bring to you. Are sort of the types of language I would be using.
I like the piece of advice that when you think about averages, you imagine a bell curve.
Yeah.
And you can tell them that, well, you obviously want to hire me. I'm not average. Like I'm better than average. You want someone that's better than average, and so you can push for better than average salary.
And so it's a far. Go ahead.
So years ago, I was in travel, and I was trying to get from point A to point B, and I wanted an upgrade on a flight, and I was with somebody who had more experience than I did. And they turned to me and said, you're using all the wrong nomenclature, because I was asking, please, will you upgrade me? Well, this person explained to me that if I used actual travel language that, and where this translates to, recruiters use, so if you talk about workforce planning or so what does the internal equity look like in this department, and those are all terms you can Google online and then you repeat those back to the recruiter, you can probably fish around for the amount that is not going to make them completely uncomfortable, that could potentially be the offer, and put the onus back on them to make you a competitive offer that they may not have been already previously comfortable making to you because they know you know the game. Or, for example, you can say, well, I know in this market, based on the research that I've done in the companies that I've talked to, for a product manager, the average is blah, 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 blah. I'm currently at this, so I'm thinking with this level of experience, I should probably be able to get between 6 and a 10% raise. And then just stop and let them talk. So that dead air is perfect because then the recruiter has to say, or the hiring manager has to address it.
The other thing I would do too is, can you negotiate a salary or an annual review at 6 months instead of a year? So can you prove that you are this, and then you've got some data to go along with it over those 6 months. Then you can go, okay, let's do our annual review at 6 months instead. A lot of employers will do that because they too want to figure out where they should put you and what's fair for you too. I had a bunch of questions today actually along this one about being a developer, being a tech lead, or going into management. I've been concerned for the last few years when people say I want to get into IT management one day, and I say that's great, except for if there's the trend, right, where engineering managers used to have teams of 5 and 10 and 12, and now they've got teams of 15, 20, and 25. There are just less engineering manager roles or IT manager roles around. I think that someone, Erin O'Neill, when she gave her presentation this morning about being a tech lead, I think that that's where I'm trying to steer people towards, is don't stop being a coder, don't stop being a developer, because that's the skill set that got you here this far. There are lots of really good engineering managers. There's lots of really good sort of management type, but there aren't a lot of really good coders. Something else that came up then during Adrian's conversation with the product management thing that I didn't bring up is, please, for the love of whoever, if you're a developer, learn the business side of what you're doing, okay? And if, for the business folks in the room, learn how to write some damn code. You can't outsource or offshore a developer who can speak to an end user, be that person at a large Fortune 500 company or somebody like me on the phone, right? Like, I can't outsource that. If you could talk with a customer, an end user, the CEO of your company, you can explain to them why the decision they're making is good or bad or otherwise, or here's how it's going to impact revenue. You've always got a job, right? The business folks too is that it's a frustration when, like, when I'm at some clients sometimes and I hear a business person trying to talk to a developer and they're really talking Martian. Like, and some of you are already smiling and giggling because you've experienced this all the time. So, but for a business person, take that as a sign of try to learn some technology terms of how things are impacting other things. I've had a lot of folks say, like, should I move out of Minneapolis and move to the Midwest to go fill in the blank? And my answer is always, I don't know. But I thought I would toss it in here anyway. So there are friends of mine who have moved to the Valley, who have moved to Austin in the last 6 or 9 months. All of them are thrilled with it. All of them are thinking they're going to be back here within the next 2 years. Whether it's because that's where they are in their life, they're realizing that the Silicon Valley housing market has gone so astronomically high that there's a bubble bursting out there. You'll note that there's actually been a lot of people leaving the Valley over the last 2 years. A lot of them have been going to Seattle because it's a little West Coast-ish, but it's still really cool for the tech scene. I would start figuring out, are the places that you're thinking about moving to, like, what's the current reputation of that town in that town? Like, what are some of the trends going on right now? Were you asking a question?
A lot of them are moving to Portland too. I went out there and people were talking about how people were literally just paying cash to buy a house there, and nobody that lives there anymore can really afford to even find a place to rent because so much overflow is coming from Silicon Valley.
And then also, there's a lot of people from Minneapolis have been thinking about Austin. Ask anybody in Austin how much their commute has gone up in the last 18 months. And their commute was 20 minutes, is now 45. And they're expecting to add somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people in the Austin area over the next 5 to 7 years. Do you really want to go there? I'm not saying that as a way to, like, get you to stay in Minneapolis. That's not the idea. But I would start researching where you're going really hard. Don't just do it because you heard some cool things about some particular region. I also say the same thing to folks who are thinking about coming here, though. Like, I think Minneapolis is a cool place to be right now. I like where our tech scene is at. I like where our companies are. I like that our economy is relatively diverse because, again, there's going to be a recession one day. But it's not perfect for everybody, right? So really get into it instead of just on a whim saying I'm going to move out to the Valley. I had one of those conversations with a lady this morning, and I'm hoping I persuaded her to at least stop and think about it, because she was literally like, I'm gone in 60 days. I'm like, where the hell are you going to that is that cool that you think you should leave here? And there was some interaction with that. So if you are going to move, again, it's probably a safe time to do it as far as the economy goes in general across the US, but really do some research on it. So I want to talk about recruiter spam for a minute. Go ahead.
What kind of things should you be researching about the places you might want to move to?
What are the things you should be searching for? I immediately would start doing find a cost of living calculator. Again, it's if that salary thing from the product management thing was true, that it's roughly 138 grand, and let's say even in the Valley that's 145 for an average product manager. Now their cost of living is roughly 1/3 higher than ours, ballpark it. So their product manager salary looks just a lot like ours now. So yeah, you can go make 145 grand in that particular role, but you're actually still making what you were making here. And so I think that things like commute times matter. I just recently moved from the North Loop after 13 years, 7 months, and 4 days. I'm now out in the West.
Not that anyone's counting.
So like even driving here this morning, I'm like usually my 15-minute commute was 35. I'm like, damn, that sucks. 35-minute commutes anywhere in the country are average or low, right? So I'm a huge thing about quality of life. How much time am I spending away from friends and family? I also would start trying to figure out in some of those recent surveys, like what are the cool technologies in that town? So a lot of times I think developers will go to a particular town and they'll realize, wow, like I'm a Ruby developer, not a lot of Ruby's done in that town. Well, that sucks. That would have been something I probably should have investigated a lot sooner. I think if you look at any sort of the forums online and just start asking people, hey, I'm from the Midwest, and I'm thinking about moving to Portland, Seattle, wherever it might be, like, what do y'all think of that? And then just be careful what you wish for the replies. But you're going to get people who are going to say real quick what they think. I think that the forums are probably the first place I would start. Yes?
Do you have any examples of forums like that?
By the way, Matt, you haven't like moved or flinched. I'm just giving you crap. I'm a huge fan of like just like Hacker News. I mean, that's just because that's just where I tend to normally look at things. Matt, do you have any like cool tech places you go to like just watch what's going on in the tech industry? Does anybody have anything that they go look at? Y'all got a bunch of blank faces. I got to do something.
News?
What's that?
For news,
Yeah, tech news.
TechCrunch with its Silicon Valley emphasis, though.
You're right.
Well, and if we're checking out a new city, you could always check out the High Tech Association.
Their version of it.
Whatever version it is.
Find their version of tech.mn.
Lots of city subreddits on Reddit sometimes
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
for discussions on, hey, I'm moving here, what do you think?
Yep.
Or they might even have a wiki on the top that's like, hey, you're going to be moving here, here's what
And be cool if someone tells you you're stupid, right? Like don't get into like a flaming war with someone who you don't know in another town because that's not worth it. There's been a question about, I've been getting this a lot lately too, but why is there so much recruiter spam lately? Well, obviously the bunch of companies are trying to hire. I would suggest that a lot of my recruiter friends suck at communicating, which is weird because like some of you are like really smiling and laughing now. There was an event last September called SourceCon that I was a presenter at, and it was only on how to market to candidates, like how to send better in-mail, how to send better email. The reason why of the increase is because like LinkedIn has become, okay, I'm going to be on camera for this one. LinkedIn is not as cool of a tool as it used to be. They have really limited what recruiters can and can't do. They're trying to charge us more for the things that used to be free. So now,
Because they were bought by Microsoft.
okay, because they might have been bought by Microsoft. Y'all probably know that. I think a lot of people have come into the recruiting space with no sales experience because there's like no barrier to entry. So one of the things that I would do is like someone asked me today, like, how do I find a really good recruiter to work with? Go ask your 5 cube mates. Go ask your friends, your colleagues, your peers. Who have you worked with in the past that you like, know, and trust? Use their referral to find a recruiter. By recruiter, I mean either a corporate or a search firm recruiter. I've got a number of friends of mine who are at Target who used to be in search firms in their previous life, who are fantastic recruiters that they will often give advice. Here's where I would go if I were you. I can't do anything about the recruiter spam other than there actually is a hashtag recruiter spam in the recruiter space now where we're calling out people for being stupid. But it's really funny when you have to call out your own friends for sending bad stuff. But
You mean like calling a recruiter who thinks you're a Java developer thinking you're a JavaScript developer?
yeah, so, well, and I actually did that a couple of years ago. I was at the JavaScript meetup, and I couldn't get anybody to interact with me. And I said, how many of you have been pitched a Java job in the last 60 days? And everybody laughed. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about, right, is that you have a lot of recruiters who don't know the technology, the skill set they're recruiting for. I would say a part of it, though, is the cost of doing business. It's the cost of being a developer. I'm taxing you in some sense, I suppose, with this. But the idea being is just tolerate it, find the ones you like, know, and trust, and blow the rest off. May not be the best advice, but that's what I'm going with.
Something we can do as tech people who are being recruited, please help educate your recruiters.
Amen to that.
I try to do that all the time.
So spend a couple times trying to educate the
This is
fool.
what this word means.
Yes. Like,
If you use this word, I will stop talking to you.
like gently try to teach a recruiter like what it is that you do. I might actually suggest on LinkedIn, if that's something that you're using, to be really specific in the summary section of what you do. And then you can say if you're looking for opportunities or not. And you can say, and if not specific to this, please do not contact me. So at least when you don't, they don't think you're a jerk. Yes?
So I was looking for a job a couple of years ago, and I posted my recruiter resume that I had recruited Java, I had recruited, you know, financial, this, that, the other, all sorts of, you know, the various Python. I get at least 3 to 5 emails a day offering me contract jobs to be a Python or a Java or a whatever. So it's not just you guys, it's actually recruiters recruiting me as another recruiter. I mean, it's just all over. So what I do is I have my LinkedIn account attached to a different email address that I don't email all the time. So I get those solicitations to something I don't have to look at.
Like create a dummy, like create another Gmail account. So it's not going to your personal account, so you're not getting pinged that many times a day. I do that too, for the record.
A comment about this recruiter spam. I can give you a perfect example of what I'm dealing with right now today. In the last 2 weeks, I've received 27 phone calls
Whoa.
from 12 different agencies, including multiple recruiters from the same agency, for the same one position.
One thing, yeah.
No, that's reasonable, right? Because
No, it's not.
the corporate want to subcontract
In
different
theory,
recruiters.
you should not get a contact from more than one recruiter in any one agency for that particular position.
So what happens is like fill in the blank agency, because we won't name any of the ones in town, because I did that a couple of years ago and got swore at. Fill in the blank agency in town, has your name in an applicant tracking system, a database, a CRM of some sort. Recruiter A sends you a note today. Recruiter B calls you on Monday. Recruiter C is not paying attention to the first two, contacts you on Wednesday. And you're like, wow, you people suck. They do, for the record. The only thing that I've ever been able to say to folks is contact back all 3 and say, I will be in touch with any one of you, and you can pick the one. And if you contact me again, I won't talk to any of you. Now, be careful about burning a bridge. We live in a really large, small town. But at least say to them, I only want one point of contact at your group, not the 3 of you. Be polite about it, but you know, it's kind of like throwing an elbow versus a punch. You know, like knock them around just a little bit, but then be like, look, I'm interested in this. And if you've got multiple agencies calling you for that one role at that one company, like I don't even know what to do other than, like I don't even know what to do. I'm running a blog post next week for our national recruiting site, which is to ask the corporate recruiters, ask companies to actually audit their search and consulting firm recruiters, right? Because what happens is on our side of it, right, is some really cool, slick, reasonably educated salesperson goes in and sells a company on working with that search firm or consulting firm, and then it's somebody with absolutely no experience actually recruiting for the roles. And that's why you're getting what you're getting, is that you now have a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing simple keyword searches on LinkedIn or any other site, and now you're getting spammed all the time. I don't know how to put it any slightly better than that.
Well, and some of these bigger companies, it's so crazy and cutthroat in there that like all of these recruiters, they're based on metrics, which not everybody needs metrics. You always have to have them. But literally, I heard a story just a few weeks ago of one giant search firm is in the same building as another giant search firm, and they're witnessing recruiters and salespeople crying in the hallways all the time, in the stairwells and all of this because they have to reach their metrics. So they're responsible for reaching out that many times, but all that's doing is like putting oil in water.
I'm not a big fan of my industry right now, to be blunt with you. Like, I just think that the demand, the amount of dollars that are at stake, or the potential dollars that are at stake, is really just making people get a little stupid. That doesn't help you any, but.
The worst part about it too is studying for a position I want.
What position?
Did you hear that, recruiters? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right, we got a couple more minutes. Yes, ma'am?
I'm just going to say, as a sign of a bad recruiter, I got an email from one with this in their tagline. Note, under Bill S. 1618, Title III, passed by the 105th U.S. Congress, This mail cannot be considered spam as long as we include contact information and this was from a recruiter.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies.
Now Jen hates our industry too.
Oh, at my last company, I worked for a fullbench.net company, and the developers actually challenged me to do a JavaScript phone screen because they were confident that I could pass it.
Yeah.
I've never coded a line of code in my life, and they really thought that I could, just because I could talk at a high level, they thought I would pass it. Well, it's that sad.
So find some recruiters that you like, know, and trust. So the last one, at least for here, and again, I'm going to finish. Okay, I'm going to finish 3 minutes before, so you get to happy hour. How much info should I share with a corporate search firm recruiter? First of all, it's whatever's comfortable to you, obviously. I am notorious for doing like 45 to 60-minute long phone screens with candidates because I just like to know how people tick. Like it's just I like to know what motivates people, what they're hopeful for, what they're fearful of. So I will tend to find out, like, you know, Jimmy or Sue have soccer game on Saturday. I'll send you an email on Wednesday to ask you how did the soccer game go. Freaks the crap out of most corporate recruiters, though, right? Or an HR person, because they're worried now that I'm going to say something that's going to get the company sued at some point in time. How much should you share about what's going on with you? Here's the deal. You wouldn't just find a doctor online and then show up for your appointment. Maybe some of you would. Just show up for your appointment and like not do any background on that doctor or that attorney or that accountant, okay? I want you to do that for the recruiters, but I also, you're trusting someone with your life is how I look at recruiting. That might sound really stark, but it is the thing that's affecting everything else is your paycheck. So try to create relationships with some recruiters that are long-term, kind of to the previous thing. Create relationships for the long run. Find a couple of really good people that you can like, know, and trust. They may become your friends. Don't share like obvious medical things. Don't share things about what family planning things you're thinking about. I've had a bunch of those lately where I've had people just say, yeah, we're like, you know, hey, you know, we're thinking about, I'm like, I don't even want to know this, so can you stop now? Again, like everything else, it's find a middle ground. You know, but it's okay to have a personality. By the way, in your LinkedIn profile too, like it's okay to say like, these are my hobbies, this is what I'm into. I also would continue to give the same advice I have for years. If you belong to any political organization on their LinkedIn group, hide that so that you don't have a really liberal or conservative person passing judgment on you because you're the other one.
What if you work for them?
If you work for a political organization, a nonprofit, if you work for a group that might be in the news lately, I don't even know. I just don't even, yeah.
You can't really do anything about it if you work for them.
You can't hide it. Here's my fear, though, right, is that I used to say pre-election that everybody was batshit crazy, and then the election happened and everybody got worse. I don't trust people. It's the one thing I don't trust anybody with right now is politics. Because I just don't know what someone's going to go off on or make a judgment on me about. For the record, I still think the Badgers suck. That will never change.
That's right.
I will hold that one until the very end. Yes, ma'am. Oh, go ahead. Yes. Yep.
I do the same thing with like keeping my hair long. I'd probably cut it, except I consider it a career filter. I'm not going to work for anybody who has a problem with this.
There you go.
All right, one last question. Anybody? Is anybody in witness protection? Can I take a photo from the other end of the room, or you can duck or something?
Where should I duck?
Yeah, just, it's okay.
DoD protection.
What do y'all, okay, because I'm going to come stand by you. Matt, what's your story? What do you want to know? You don't have any questions? By the way, I just tried to take a selfie of me. That was really weird. All right, 1, 2, 3. Y'all smile or hide or whatever you want to do. I'll hang out here for a little while. I will then go to happy hour. I'm not going to be drinking at all. If anybody wants my 2 tickets, feel free to take them from me. You guys, thanks for hanging out till the end of the day. I really appreciate this. But if you have questions, come up and grab me now or when we get over to happy hour. Thanks, guys.